Okay, so this is day 3 here of our tanning process. What I've got here is I've got my big drum back, and I've got about 25 gallons of water in it. Hot water, as hot as my water heater heats it. And what we're going to do is we're going to dissolve the salt in it for our saltwater bath. I say 25 gallons because that will cover all the fur that I'm doing. You know, you want to have water covering it. So I mean, if you're doing, you know, less, then naturally you use less water. But anyway, I know 25 gallons is about right for me. And what we're going to do is we're going to add salt with a ratio of half a pound per salt per gallon. So I'm going to use about 12.5 to 13 pounds of salt here for my solution here. And this is where you can use your coarse salt. 12.5 pounds, you know, quite a little substantial amount. So anyway, I know my cup here holds 3 pounds, so we're gonna add our salt in there, and then we're gonna mix it around, and we're going to dilute it. I've just got a boat paddle right here, and then we're gonna let it cool. We want this water cool. You don't want to add your hides to the hot water. So we'll get this all diluted, we'll let it cool down, and then we'll add our hides here in a minute. Okay, so we brought all our hides out here. Our water's cooled down and all our salt is dissolved. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take these hides and we're going to unroll them. We're going to turn them back to fur in, and we're going to scrape that old nasty salt off of them just like we did yesterday. And then we're going to submerge them in this saltwater solution. Now this is in the afternoon. It's after I got home from work. So we're going to leave the hides, everything but the foxes, in this saltwater solution for about 24 hours, you know, until I get home from work tomorrow afternoon. The foxes, because they're so thin-skinned, we don't want to leave them in quite as long. So we're going to leave them in for about 6 or 8 hours. I'll come out tonight and take the foxes out, and I'll rinse them off in just clean water, and I'll snap them dry, turn them back to fur out, and just hang them up inside my building here. And they won't dry much over the course of the 12-14 hour period until I get home from work, and then they'll be caught up with the same time as all these other critters will come out, and then everything will be the same, and we'll move on to the following process. So we're going to scrape the salt off of them and submerge them in the hide quick. Okay, so we'll just follow this coon again. Just to show you the process, real simple. Here, we'll take our coon. Now you'll notice that the critters, they're starting to turn white, and what that is that's, for lack of a better term, what makes that critter turn a little bit brown after you dry them is basically the fat oxidizing, for lack of a better term. But what it is that fat and oil and that salt's been removed so you're basically back down to good prime hide. You know, if you're working with prime critters, you know, you can see he's a lot whiter than what he started out to be. So real simple here, flip him around. I kind of take my boat paddle and just kind of give him a good little thump in there. That knocks most of the salt off for the most part. You know, you're dealing with kind of used up salt. And then just once again, the back of the knife, scrape him down. Into the bucket he goes, and we'll just stir that. I'll stir that about 3 times, you know, once tonight, once before I go to bed, and then once before I go to work tomorrow morning, you know, and then by the time I come home, we'll be ready for our next process. Like I said, these foxes, we're going about 4:30, 5 o'clock now, we're going to give them to 10:30 tonight. We're going to pull them out and wash them. And what it is it's so thin of a skin, you know, we don't want them to basically start deteriorating in the water. So everything else will handle it just fine. For the most part, the foxes will handle it, but in the past I've had some that have slipped, so I've just started going to 5 and 6 hours, and since I've did that, I've had no problems with my tanning, and I've had no problems with slippage. So you know, there it is, pretty simple. Okay, one quick note, there it is. You can see there's 26 pelts in there, and you know, it'll take a few minutes just to get the air out of the fur, and I'll stir them around a little bit, but you can see that amount of water just covers the fur. So you know, we're not filling this drum completely full, you know. Just cover them what you think, and use your best judgment, and everything will work out. Okay, so it's the following day. These hides have been in here for about 24 hours, our saltwater solution. You can see I've got a big tub of water here, and what we're going to do is just rinse the hides off now. Now, as you can see, the hides have turned a nice white color. That's the primeness in the hide coming out. But you can see some places, like on this skunk, you can see that little ring of fat around the edges. That needs to be addressed in order for the tanning solution to take full effect. You can see on this otter, there's a little bit of meat and membrane around the head, and then all through the body. Although it looked like it was perfectly fleshed, you know, there's still just a patch or two here and there that have came out. Usually on your thin-skinned animals, they're just fine. You know, like this coyote here, it looks great all the way through. Beavers are usually the toughest, it seems like. There's usually quite a bit that you can see there on the butt end part of the beaver, and that needs to be removed, or basically thinned out. The skin does. Now you can take this and put this on the fleshing beam again, you know, or simply take a fillet knife and work that skin down. On coons, a lot, it's right around the neck area, and those of you know, the neck area is usually the toughest. The skin's also the thickest there, like that otter. You can see these places here. There's not much, but to make a good quality tan, that needs to be removed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these out of the saltwater bath. I'm going to rinse them off real good in just regular water, and then I'm going to actually just take them and I'm going to hang them up, and I'm going to let them dry just a little bit. Like I said, you can either put these on the fleshing beam or just work a knife and thin them down. On coons, I like to get the back of the neck area a little bit, and what it does is it makes the fur, or the hide rather, a lot more supple, and you know, it's a lot more limber, and especially if you're into making stuff with them, it's a lot easier to work with. So anyway, you can use a fleshing knife and a fleshing beam, but what I have found that works the best is if I take these hides and I hang them up and I let them partially dry for a day, and then I've just got a die grinder here with a fine wire brush wheel. I can go through and I can knock off all that fat in no amount of time, and fat and membrane both, and it works out real well. And it actually it kind of breaks the fibers a little bit on the whole hide, and it gives that hide that nice kind of a raw hide or cowhide quality, you know, that everybody thinks they're going to get out of this. So like I said, there's many different ways to do it. This is my preferred way. Not saying it's perfectly right, but it works well for me. So like I said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to wash these hides and I'm going to rinse them off, and I'm just going to hang them up on my drying rack, and I'm going to let them sit one full day, and then tomorrow afternoon they'll have dried for 24 hours. You know, and the hides will be softened up just enough to go ahead and we'll thin the skin out. So we're gonna get these guys rinsed off, and then we'll show you that process. Okay, so I held a few of these pelts back to show you better what I'm talking about. This is a very large beaver here. He was probably within the 50 to 60 pound range. But anyway, you can see how the tanning process has really showed up the few areas that, although this beaver appeared very well fleshed, the salting process and everything has brought out. You can see right there, that's an area of fat and thick skin and a little bit of membrane there. Same as over here on this otter, you know, and these are stuff that you really can't see, you know, whenever you're fleshing a hide, but it's stuff that needs to be removed. You can see down the tail, there's a little bit on the back. That's a back of an otter. There's a little bit of membrane here on this otter. This is another very large beaver. This is down the center of the back, and you can actually feel how thick the hide is compared to the outside. The belly side's always softer. But if you address this now and thin this skin out, it's a lot easier to break this skin in after the tanning process is done. So this is really what we're shooting for here, just to remove all that. Okay, so all I'm doing here is just simply, I just taking my hide out of the salt solution. He's already fur in, and I'm just wringing out as much water as I can out of him. And then I'm just simply coming over here to my clean water bath, working him around quite a bit. Turning back fur out. Give him a nice little scrubbing. And then I'm just gonna wring him out and drain off just as much water as I can. And then I'm gonna just turn him back fur in and allow him to dry a little bit before I start the skin thinning process. So you can see how nice they've turned, you know, by the salting. So that'd be that. Okay, so you can just see I've just got all the furs turned fur back in and hung on my drying rack, and we're just going to let them set up a little bit basically so we can thin the skin. On the beavers, you can actually see right there, that's that thick part of the skin. If you're just doing a wall hanger, it's not that big of a deal, but most of mine get used for garments, and that skin's real thick. It needs to be thinned down in order to make a nice material. So it's easier for me to just go ahead and tack my beavers up just real loose, because what happens is if you hang a beaver from a nail, he wants to curl up, and it's real hard to get him to dry out evenly. So we've done them just that way. They dry out real nice. Anyway, they're hanging there. We'll hang them there for about a day until we can use our wire wheel and thin the skin. Okay, so it's been a couple of days. We've let our hides kind of dry out and just set a little bit. And I've just taken this wire wheel here that I showed you guys, and right here I've knocked some of the skin, thinned it down here on the back. This is the coon we've been following, so I figured I'd stick with this. And we're just hanging with him. I just knocked that'll make that skin real thin, or thinner, and you know, it'll make it break down a lot easier once we break these hides. You know, this down here, this is fine, but you know, a coon's neck's really stiff. So we thin that down a little bit, and then on like this otter here, what I did was after a day I kind of put him on a board to get a good flat surface to work on, and you can see I've just knocked any of the fat chunks off of him, you know, and just work that wire wheel over him a little bit, and it works out real well, and you know, it really helps in the breaking process. So anyway, I've done this to all these hides I need to. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna get these hides, and we're gonna take and we're gonna wash them in a Dawn solution, and we're gonna wash everything off of them. So I'll get my tub filled up with water, get Dawn in it, and bring you guys back. I just wanted to show here, this is a bigger beaver, and you know, as they get older they get a lot tougher. So you can see where I just rough tacked him on the board and let him dry, and then you can see right there where I took my wire wheel and I knocked off all that heavy skin and heavy membrane, and you know, it doesn't look real good now, but it'll turn out real great once we tan him. So that's all thinned down, it looks good, and we'll get on to the washing process.